Louis Vuitton was a French entrepreneur and designer whose name has become iconic in the fashion world. His brand is the leader of the global luxury goods industry, and with a brand value of over $30 billion, it is the most valuable luxury brand in the world. But did you know that Louis himself was once a poor, homeless boy who ran away from home? This is a story you do not want to miss. At least once in your life, you must have wondered how on earth luxury brands come up with their exuberant prices. Do they decide to be so expensive before production, or rather after, once they notice their great success? Well, in the case of luxury brand Louis Vuitton, it was definitely the product that came first. And what makes the whole story even more interesting is that the original creator was in fact a dirt poor boy who had no idea that his brand would one day turn out to be so successful. Little Louis was born on August 4, 1821 in Angers, in eastern France's mountainous and heavily wooded Jura region. Descended from a long-established working-class family, his ancestors were carpenters, farmers, and milliners. His father, Xavier Vuitton, was a farmer, and his mother, Corone Gaillard, was a milliner. Louis loved his mother dearly, but unfortunately she passed away when he was only 10 years old. His father soon remarried, and as legend has it, Louis's new stepmother was as wicked as any fairy tale Cinderella villain can be. She was mean and belittled him, and Louis soon grew tired of the constant harassment. After 3 years of enduring her pestering, the willful and headstrong Louis decided it was time for a change. Antagonized by his stepmother and bored by the provincial life in Angers, Louis resolved to run away to the bustling capital of Paris. He decided that he would wait until the first day of the year when the weather was good enough to travel. And finally, in the spring of 1835, he left his home at the age of 13. He was all alone and on foot, and had only one destination in mind: Paris. He walked the 300 miles or 482 kilometers to Paris, and the entire journey took him more than 2 years. As he needed to feed himself, he would stop along the way to work odd jobs and earn food to survive. He slept wherever he could find shelter for the night. Being picky was not an option. Eventually, he arrived in Paris in 1837 at the age of 16. The city was right in the thick of an industrial revolution that had produced some big contradictions: awe-inspiring grandeur and rapid growth versus abject poverty and devastating epidemics. The experience was overwhelming to say the least, but young Louis was here to stay. He found a job as an apprentice to a famous boxmaker, Monsieur Maréchal, and started working hard. Maréchal was a well-known and successful boxmaker who produced custom-made boxes. In 19th century Europe, boxmaking was a highly respectable and urbane craft. Traveling by horse and carriage, trains and boats as they did in those days, meant that luggage was often handled roughly and thrown about. So a strong box to protect belongings was essential. Security was also an issue, and it was important for customers to be able to lock their goods away and make sure that it wasn't easy for thieves to pick the lock. Louis showed enormous talent for his new profession, working at the atelier of Monsieur Maréchal. It took him only a few years to stake out a reputation amongst Paris's fashionable class as one of the city's premier practitioners of his new craft. Then, on December 2, 1851, 16 years after Louis arrived in Paris, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte staged a coup d'etat. Exactly 1 year later, he assumed the title of Emperor of the French under the regal name of Napoleon III. While not everyone was happy with this change, the re-establishment of the French Empire under Napoleon III proved incredibly fortunate for young Louis. And this is when his rise to prominence began. Although still a young man, Louis's reputation was so good that when Napoleon married in 1853, his wife-to-be, Empress Eugenia, hired him as her personal boxmaker and packer. As she was a Spanish countess and the Empress of France, Eugenia de Montijo was a powerful lady with a lot of influence. She commanded Louis to make boxes that would hold her beautiful clothes in an exquisite way. and in turn provided a gateway for him to a class of elite and royal clientele who would seek his services for the duration of his life and far beyond. At this point, Louis understood that after 17 years of having worked for Monsieur Maréchal, the time had come to leave his job behind and set up his own shop. The sign outside the store read, "Securely packs the most fragile objects," specializing in packing fashions. The shop was hugely successful, and orders came flying in from the rich and famous of Paris. His designs were innovative and far ahead of his competitors, and royalties from around the world flocked to his store to buy his beautiful boxes. Louis was arguably the father of modern luggage as we know it, since it was he who designed a canvas trunk in 1858 to replace the traditional heavy wooden boxes of the day. To say that he was an innovative entrepreneur would be an understatement. But work was not all that was going well for Louis. 1854 was a year full of change and transformation for the 33-year-old man. Because besides setting up his own shop, it was also in that year that he met a 17-year-old beauty named Clémence Emilie Pariot. Despite the age gap, the two seemed to be in love, and the young girl turned out to be a very good influence on him. She supported him and immediately encouraged him to dress better and more in accordance with his new office. You see, it was also she who had motivated him to create his own business. His great-grandson, Henry Louis Vuitton, later recounted, "In the blink of an eye, he exchanged the cloth frock and hobnailed shoes of a worker for the courting outfit of the day." The transformation was spectacular, but it required all the know-how of the store's department manager since Louis's shoulders were much larger than those of Parisian bureaucrats. So far, so good, but don't think that everything was rosy until his death. Louis still had some battles to fight. In 1858, 4 years after opening his own shop, he debuted an entirely new trunk, one that wasn't made out of leather, but out of gray canvas that was much lighter, sturdier, and impermeable to water and bad odors. It was a real innovation for his time. Nonetheless, what was most notable was the shape of the trunk. It wasn't rounded, as was the standard for luggage in that period. Instead, it was a rectangular box, which was much easier to transport and offered more useful storage space. This was also its main key selling point, as more and more people were now traveling by railroad and steamship. Stackable boxes came in very handy. As mentioned earlier, most experts consider Louis's trunk the birth of modern luggage, and it proved to be an immediate commercial success. This was in part thanks to advances in transportation and the expansion of travel. In fact, the trunks were such a rousing success that he had to create a much bigger factory in Asnières, a town on the outskirts of Paris. From there, he responded to requests not just from French aristocrats, but from the whole world. The future looked bright, but little did he know, life had some more curveballs to throw his way. More specifically, a bloody civil war. A true innovator, Louis tried to introduce handbags in 1867, but that met with cultural resistance and the product didn't take off at the time. Nonetheless, business was booming, and besides receiving constant personal orders from French royalty, also people from across the globe were seeking to get their hands on one of his pieces. Even Ismail Pasha, the Khedive of Egypt, requested a handmade trunk. In 1870, however, Louis's business was interrupted by the outbreak of the Franco-Prussian War and the subsequent siege of Paris. These events gave way to a bloody civil war that destroyed the French Empire. Louis had become homeless again. This time with his family. They barely survived the war, and when the siege finally ended on January 28, 1871, Louis returned to Asnières to find the village in ruins, his staff dispersed, his equipment stolen, and his shop destroyed. Showing the same stubborn, can-do spirit he displayed by walking almost 300 miles alone at the age of 13, he immediately devoted himself to the restoration of his business. It was a Herculean effort, but within months he had managed to build a new shop at a new address, 1 Rue Scribe. The shop was located in the very heart of the new Paris, which gave it a greater status than ever before. And along with the new address also came a new focus on luxury. Rue Scribe was home to the prestigious Jockey Club and had a decidedly more aristocratic feel than Vuitton's previous location in Asnières. 1 year later, he introduced a new trunk design featuring beige canvas and red stripes. The simple yet luxurious new design appealed to Paris's new elite, and it immediately became the object of desire of the most powerful classes. This marked the beginning of the Louis Vuitton label's modern incarnation as a luxury brand. For the next 20 years, Louis continued to operate out of One Rue Scribe, innovating high-quality luxury luggage until he died on February 27, 1892, at the age of 70. But the Louis Vuitton line would not die with its eponymous founder. Over the years, he had introduced his son George to the business. The father and son duo revolutionized luggage locking, and George patented his lock system and even challenged the great magician Houdini to break out of an LV box. Houdini didn't rise to the challenge, but the gesture proved how effective the locks were. They are still in use today. Under his son George, who created the company's famous LV monogram, the Louis Vuitton brand would grow into the world-renowned luxury leather and lifestyle brand it remains today. After the passing of Louis and his son George, the creativity of the family dried up. But luckily the brand was already big enough to stand on its own feet. As you can see, creating a luxury brand does not happen overnight. Louis probably did not start with luxury in mind. He was a broke, homeless boy who just wanted to make a living, but his expertise and confidence in his skills gave the brand its definition. Today, LV ranks as the top luxury brand in the world. The company operates in 50 countries, with more than 460 stores worldwide, and its valuation has topped $30 billion. Innovation is a continuous process for a true creator or entrepreneur, and despite having been homeless twice, Louis still bounced back each time stronger than ever before. Nothing seemed to stop him from making bags, and it is precisely this that led him to achieving what he did. From humble beginnings to a worldwide success, this was the incredible story of how a homeless kid laid the foundation for a billion-dollar empire that is still relevant today, more than a century later. Do you have a business in mind that you would like us to cover in the future? Then make sure to share it in the comments. Make sure to check out our channel for more inspiring stories.